The world-famous race car driver Mario Andretti said, "Don't look at the wall. Your car goes where your eyes go." And at that moment, that was an aha moment for me. Because bringing this back full circle to my car accident and my fear of driving and what I was focusing on, remember I shared with you that I kept focusing on the car on the right? No matter where I was, it was always the car on the right. And I was so afraid they were going to crash into me. That was me focusing on the wall. Hey there, it's Suzanne Oshima, your fellow sister on a mission to empower and inspire you through the twists and turns of midlife. And I'm here to help you transform it into your best life with the Life is Now podcast. And I'm super excited to dive into this new journey together. Life's challenges can often be our greatest teachers. Every experience, whether positive or negative, that we go through in our lives leaves us with a lesson. Whether we choose to learn from it and make changes in our lives going forward is up to each one of us. So in the sub-series of my podcast called Life's Lessons, I'm sharing personal stories from my life that taught me a lesson on the importance of resilience, courage, and letting go. So you'll hear how these pivotal moments in my life changed me for the better. And my hope is that these lessons not only connect with you, but help you reflect and navigate your own journey in life with more confidence and courage. So today, what I wanted to focus on is how to shift your focus and stop letting fear drive your life. So I want to share a story with you that happened about 2 years ago. It was after I moved from New York to California. And when I lived in New York, I didn't have a car because if you know anything about New York City, you don't really need a car to live in the city. Public transportation and getting in and out of the city is actually really easy. And plus, it's really expensive to have a car in the city. So anyways, when I moved to California, to Newport Beach, it was time to get a new car because out here, you do need a car to get around. It's much more difficult. The public transportation system isn't as efficient as it is in New York City. So I had to get a new car. And I was excited because I hadn't had a car in, oh my goodness, 22 years, which is crazy to me. And before that, I always loved driving. Like to me, driving is freedom. It's relaxing. I always feel confident about driving. And I just love being able to go to wherever I want to go, whether it's a day trip to the beach or driving up to LA, because I live, for those of you that don't know California that well, I live about an hour outside of LA, depending on traffic. If you live in this area, you know what I mean. It could take an hour, it could take 2 hours. Anyways, having a car again was freedom to me, and it was relaxing. I love driving. Anyways, about 2 years ago, about a year after I moved here, I was living in an apartment complex, and I was parked in a red zone because there wasn't any parking by my apartment. So I went running, and at this apartment complex, they were lax about parking in the red zone because they knew there was a parking shortage. So anyways, that day I actually went for a run, and on my way back from the run, I noticed that there was a parking space available. And I'm always a play by the rules kind of a girl. So I was like, I know they don't care if you park in the red zone, but I ran upstairs to get my keys to move my car into this spot. So I come downstairs, I jump in my car, and literally the spot from where I was parked in the red zone was literally like probably 20 feet, maybe 30 feet at the most, maybe 40 at the most. Okay, 40 feet at the most. So I jump in my car and I start pulling into the spot. And I'm about to reach the end, and all of a sudden, as right before I put my foot on the brake, all of a sudden I feel my car take over, like the acceleration, and my foot wasn't even on the accelerator. That's what the crazy thing was. My foot was ready to go to the brake, and all of a sudden the acceleration in the car, all of a sudden the car took off and it goes over an embankment. I go down this hill and I crash into the apartment complex garage. Thank God that wall was actually there. I mean, it was terrifying that I went over this hill and I go down this embankment into the garage, but thank God there was something there to stop me, because otherwise it could have been really, really bad. Anyways, when that happened, at that moment, obviously, I was in complete shock. I was like, oh my God, what just happened? I was like, this car, it was so crazy that the car just took over and I felt out of control, obviously, because I couldn't stop the car. And it was terrifying. I get out of the car and people were like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah," but I was in complete shock, to be honest. Anyways, long story short, it turns out they did a study on the car. They did some tests on the car. The car accelerated on its own, and the car was totaled. Anyways, like I had mentioned to you, I've always been a really confident driver. Always. I've always been, very confident with driving. I love driving. And after this accident happened, I will share with you that I went from confident to completely terrified to driving. I was now a nervous driver. I didn't have a car anymore. My car was totaled, so I had to rent cars, right? And this was during the pandemic when it wasn't easy to just buy a new car. So, because there weren't any available. So I had to do rental cars for a long time before I found a new car to buy, or when my new car came in. And so as I was driving these rental cars, it was terrifying to me. I was so nervous driving. I would clutch the steering wheel so tight that my hands would actually start to hurt, or they would go numb depending on wherever I was going. And I always felt this constant anxiety within me, like in my heart and in my gut, that, oh God, am I going to get into another accident? Because if I get into another accident, oh my God, I was like, well, they take away my license, my insurance is going to go up, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, it didn't matter that the car malfunctioned. It did not matter. My insurance company still considered it my fault. So anyways, I was in a constant state of anxiety driving. And whenever I would drive, I would always have this fear, for some reason, I don't know why, but the car on the right side of me that would be driving. So whatever car was there on the right in that lane right next to me, I kept focusing on that car because I had this fear that that car was going to come into my lane and hit me, and that they weren't going to see me. And so every time I would drive, I would keep focusing on that car on the right. It was weird. I wouldn't focus on the left, but the right car. And I would always fear that, oh my God, they're not going to see me. I'm in their blind spot, or they're just going to come crashing into me. So anyways, this honestly, even after I got my new car, I still had the same anxiety. And probably more so because now I owned this new car, and I was so afraid that, oh God, what if I total this car? And so every time I would go out, wherever it was exhausting. I would come home from driving wherever it was, whether it was a long distance or short distance, and I would be completely exhausted mentally and physically because, like I said, I was on high alert every time I got in the car. And I even went through therapy to help me with the anxiety of this driving. And people said, oh, it just takes time to get over it. Well, a year and a half later, yeah, that's how long it took me to get over this and let go of the fear and not have that constant feeling of anxiety every time I got in a car. And now, just to let you know, now I don't have this fear anymore. Thank goodness, because it was awful. When I say it was awful, it was like every time I had to drive somewhere far, the day before, I was like, oh God, this is going to be such a long trip. And that's no way to live your life. So why am I sharing this story with you? Well, fast forward to actually I would say it was about a month ago. I was driving in my car, and I always like to listen to different podcasts, and I always pick podcasts that put me in a positive mindset or something that I can learn from, whether it's personally or professionally. And this day, I was actually listening to Ed Mylett. Some of you may know him, some of you may not. He's more of a business coach. Anyways, I was listening to his podcast, and he's having this conversation with somebody. I don't even remember who it was. And he was talking about one of his high-profile clients that he coached, who was a professional race car driver. And Ed was talking about fear, and he said, I can't give you the name of this race car driver, but he said, and obviously, even if you don't know anything about race car driving, they're going really fast, like over 100 miles an hour on this track. And he said his client told him that when he's on the track, he doesn't look at the wall. And it was interesting. While I was listening to this, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he said, yeah, because you don't want to look at the wall. That can mess you up, right? As you're driving really fast. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it really struck me. And so when I got home, I Googled, because I didn't know if this was something that just his client did, because I don't know anything about race car driving, or if this is something that all race car drivers do. So I got home, I Googled, and I wanted to find out why that is. And so I found this article with an interview with Mario Andretti. He's a famous race car driver, if you don't know. I actually know that because I don't know how, when I was in college, they did the Long Beach Grand Prix, and he was one of the drivers. That's the only reason why I know that. But anyways, there was a quote from him that said, "Don't look at the wall. Your car goes where your eyes go." And I was like, oh my God, that's so true, right? If you're focused on the wall, that's where your car's going to go. And if they're going that fast, you cannot focus on the wall. So I'm going to say it again. Mario Andretti said, don't look at the wall. Your car goes where your eyes go. And at that moment, that was an aha moment for me. Because bringing this back full circle to my car accident and my fear of driving and what I was focusing on, remember I shared with you that I kept focusing on the car on the right? No matter where I was, it was always the car on the right. And I was so afraid they were going to crash into me. That was me focusing on the wall rather than straight ahead. And no wonder I had such a hard time overcoming my fear of driving again after the car accident because I kept focusing on the wall. And I realized, had I been training myself not to focus on quote unquote the wall, and trained myself, even though I had a valid fear of driving, is to focus on where I was going and the road ahead, that it would have helped me recover from my fear of driving again. And this lesson, because this didn't come to me right away, is this lesson came up also recently during the Olympics. I don't know about you, the Paris Olympics were something that I watched almost every night. And I don't know why I was hooked on the gymnastics competition. And I've never been hooked on any of, gymnastics. I've been hooked on swimming because I used to be on a swim team, but gymnastics was never my sport. So I don't know why I was hooked on that, but I was. And as these gymnasts were going on the balance beam, if you remember Suni Lee, she was on the balance beam and the commentators were talking about, how being on the balance beam, how you can lose your balance, obviously, and you can fall. And the commentator said, gymnasts are actually taught to never look at the floor. And the reason why is because if they look at the floor, that's where they'll go. They'll immediately fall off the beam. And it was proven. When Suni Lee looked at the floor, she fell on the beam and then she fell to the floor. It was a really bad fall. And it got me thinking, because that's another example of focusing on the floor, the wall, is when we focus on those things in life, in any part of our life, whether it's personally or professionally, when we focus on the floor or the wall, we're focusing on the wrong thing. We're not focusing on where we're going. Because if you think about it, with the race car driver or the gymnast, the race car driver isn't focused on the wall. He's focused on the finish line and finishing first. And the gymnast isn't focused on the floor when she's on the balance beam. She's focused on the gold medal that she wants to win. They're both focused on the end goal. So they're not getting distracted by the wall or the floor. And so if you look in your own life, and as you're on your journey to achieve your life goals, when something goes wrong in your life, or when something in your life doesn't turn out how you expected, or you fail, my question for you is, what are you focusing on? Are you focused on the wrong thing, the floor or the wall? Or are you focused on your end goal, achieving your end goal? Think of your end goal as like the gold medal or the finish line to the gymnast or the race car driver. And I'll be honest with you, when I started to reflect in my own life, whether it's personally or professionally, when I looked at these two examples of the race car driver not looking at the wall and the gymnast not looking at the floor, I started to realize when I reflected on my own life personally and professionally is how sometimes I would get distracted by the floor or the wall because I was focusing on the wrong thing, like people criticizing me, or negative people who would say, oh, you can't do that, or, oh, I hope you have an exit strategy. Or it was me with my own negative self-talk, or my fear of failing, or beating myself up for what I did or what I didn't do. And I realized in all of those moments, that was focusing on the floor or the wall for me, personally or professionally. And so after I learned these two great strategies about not focusing on the floor or the wall, is now I catch myself in the moment. When I start to notice my mind wandering or my thoughts wandering towards the negative, I catch myself and I immediately snap myself out of it by asking myself, are you focusing on the floor or the wall, or are you focusing on your end goal? And when I ask myself that question, I immediately snap out of it. And I start focusing on the right things. And so I invite you to also try and catch yourself in that moment where you're focusing on the wrong thing, the floor or the wall, and start training yourself and your mind to refocus on your life goal, whatever it is that you want to achieve. Because just remember this, is focusing on the floor or the wall is completely wasted energy. And quite honestly, it doesn't fix or change anything. If you want to fix or change it, put all of your focus, energy, and actions on achieving your dream. Because that's where you're going. You're not going to the floor or the wall. Hey there, if you enjoyed this podcast and are ready to transform midlife into your best life, visit SuzanneOshima.com to become an insider and join my email list. As an insider, you'll be the first to know about new episodes and gain access to exclusive content that empowers and inspires you on your midlife journey today and in the future.